Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Draft Capital here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. I'm Stephen Gillespie, and unfortunately today my co-host Chris LeBron is not going to be here with us, but fret not, we have an awesome show lined up for you guys today. We're going to be bringing on Mr. Sam Ferris, who is the host of Draft Dummies and is also one of the awesome members, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network that cover the NBA draft. Sam, how you doing today?
Doing very well. Thank you for the invite. Always excited to talk basketball, so been looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sam, before we get into the details of the show, for some of my listeners or viewers, thank you very much if you're watching or listening live right now. Sam, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and how you came to be kind of where you are right now?
Yeah, so I've always been an NBA and college basketball fan, and then during the pandemic, I had a little bit more time on my hands, and my friend Cody and I always kind of talked about starting a podcast, and the NBA draft has always been a passion of ours. And so during that time, we were like, let's just go for it. And my friend Cody had a friend that did professional editing and kind of helped us with some of the semantics in terms of getting a podcast started. Unfortunately, Cody kind of had to quit in the last few months with other stuff going on in life, but it's one of my passions, one of my hobbies. I love doing it. And so, like you said, I now do a weekly show on the Locked On NBA draft, and then I'm very active just on Twitter, posting clips, posting stats and my thoughts, both regarding, prospects in college that are going to be in the NBA draft in the future, as well as, the rookies and sophomores in the NBA that we've been following over the last few years. So do a little bit of all of that.
Yeah, and I've been following you, on Twitter and watching some of your takes on the sophomores and the freshmen, so to speak, of the NBA, and a lot of great insight on there. Before we get into, again, the show, Sam, just talk to us a little bit about, some of the guys who maybe have stood out to you in the pros that you may have had a little bit more questions on, but you saw kind of a bright future for them coming into the NBA.
Did you want to do like rookies or sophomores, or did you
Either or, man. Just like who's standing out to you right now?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Evan Mobley. I think he's been the most productive and probably just the most impressive overall rookie from this class. Yeah, he's been awesome. It's pretty rare that a rookie can come in and actually make a very positive impact on winning, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But he looks like a generational big. Reminds me of a little bit of a young Kevin Garnett, just in the way that just their body type, kind of that spidery long big, who's just fantastic in space. But the scoring also has been better than I anticipated, especially this early on. So he has been awesome. Scotty Barnes to me is also. I also had Scotty Barnes, I think 8th on my board, so I wasn't low on him. But again, the scoring numbers that he's pretty surprising. There's a lot of guys. I mean, we could do a full show just on the rookies for sure, but it's been fun tracking them, and I think a lot of them are already exceeding expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Scotty Barnes. I kind of had him lower on my board too. I want to say it was pretty similar. I want to say around 9th is where I had him. And I don't even think some of the people who looked into his game and started, prognosticating a little bit, how good he could possibly be at the next level. I don't know if anyone anticipated, even the most, high hopingest people that scouted the college ranks saw the offensive outburst that he's putting forth right now for the Toronto Raptors. But before we get into today's show, I want to remind everybody that Draft Capital is brought to you by Built Bar. Unlike all the other bars that are out there that taste either like old Play-Doh or a piece of cardboard, when you eat a Built Bar, you will think that you are cheating on your diet with a delicious chocolate dessert. If your kids find out how good these things are, you're going to have to buy more because they will be begging for them. They have great flavors such as cookies and cream, double chocolate, strawberry, peanut butter brownie, and much more. Built Bar now has a mystery flavor, and if you guess that thing correctly, you could win a prize. Go over to built.com, enter in promo code off the ball. That'll let you know that we send you over here at Draft Capital, and they'll hook you up with 10% discount. All right, Sam. So today's show,
I was just about to eat a Built Bar myself, actually.
Oh, hey.
I'm a big fan, so yep.
What's your favorite flavor, Sam?
I love like the cookie dough one, but they sent me, because they're one of my sponsors as well.
Right.
Blueberry muffin they sent me, and I thought that was kind of strange, but I love that one too, so I'm a fan.
Have you had the mystery flavor yet?
No, I haven't. Have you?
I haven't either. I've heard a lot of interesting things about it. I don't know if anyone's even got it right yet, but why don't you, for all you lovely listeners and viewers, head over to built.com and try to take a crack at it. And again, enter in promo code off the ball, and I'll let you know that I sent you. So, Sam, today I'm titling today's show Your Fantastic Four, because when we were getting together to talk about what we wanted to discuss here on the show, everybody's talking about Paulo Banchero, rightfully so. He had a dominant performance. Everyone's been talking about Chet Holmgren for like the past year, rightfully so. I mean, he had a great game against, what was it, Dixie State?
Dixie State, yep.
Dixie State, right? Yep. So wherever that's at, right? But that, those two are pretty polarizing, pretty popular players. But Sam, I wanted to talk to you about some like 4 guys that stood out to you in your evaluations in the offseason. And now we've maybe seen 3 of these 4 guys actually play a ball game right now. Yep. One of them we haven't seen play yet, but it looks like he'll have a pretty easy game coming on his docket. But we're going to open up probably the most popular, I would say, these for Sam, and that's Jabari Smith Jr. coming out of Auburn. Talk to me a little bit about why he stood out to you before the season even started.
Yeah, so what I like to say with Jabari Smith, because when we look at this class overall, the overall picture, I think a lot of people do think that there might be a little bit of just a lack of star power at the top, and especially after the top 2 guys you mentioned in Chet and Banchero. And I think Jabari Smith has a chance to, I don't know if I want to say define this class, but just add some extra kind of sizzle to this class. And a guy that I think his ceiling is probably as high as anybody outside of the top 2 guys in this class. And so he to me is kind of like a prototypical modern 4, where he's like 6'9", he's a plus athlete. The hope for him is that he's going to be able to be switchable defensively. But then the upside is there offensively too. I love his jump shot. It's very versatile, very projectable for a guy his size. We saw him in the opening game that he played, obviously not a great team, but I think made a couple threes, took a pull-up, including even like a post fadeaway. And so just when you see him shoot a jump shot, he's one of those guys where you're like, yep, that is an NBA player. He can kind of do the jab and then just get into a pull-up jumper. It looks smooth, it's projectable, and the tools are all there for him to be kind of that modern 4 in the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you spoke on his frame. I've seen him measured at about 6'10". You're saying 6'9". I've heard 6'8". We'll find out, when the combines with the Hong Kong numbers are for this guy, right? But also weight-wise, about 210. Played his ball in high school here in Georgia, where I'm currently stationed at right now. Committed to Auburn, obviously. His U19 numbers were really good. Hopped on the film there for that team. Named to be a McDonald's All-American, was Mr. Georgia. In a couple places that I'm looking at, Sam, NBA Draft Room had him ranked 7th. He's 8th on Tankathon. He's number 10 on NBA DraftNet, 4 for Blue Report, 7 for ESPN, 9 for Rookie Wire, 4 for Sporting News. And a guy over at Off the Ball Network, our own Richardson Demir, has him ranked 15th, pretty low compared to a lot of other places. But Sam, I don't know if you have a board that you're willing to divulge here on the show, but kind of, are you projecting, maybe top 5, top 10, for sure lottery pick, I'm thinking, but where's your gut check on him right now?
Yeah, so I don't have like a full board built out yet. I just want to see more of these guys, obviously. But I do have him slotted in probably at 4 or 5 right now, which, that's why I have him listed as a guy that I think I am going to be higher on. But I don't know if you mentioned this in kind of that list you went through. I did see Mike Schmitz at ESPN today has him listed at number 4 as well. So I thought I was higher, but it looks like there's going to be some other guys that view him as like a top half of the lottery guy as well.
Yeah, I didn't have Schmitz's number here. I saw on ESPN though that he was listed at 7. Is probably one of the other reporters or whatnot that they have listed there. But anywhere, what I'm seeing, anywhere from like 4 to 10, he's living in that neighborhood. And you mentioned that he just had a game against Morehead State. He scored 8 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, a block, and 0 turnovers. I thought, his offense obviously wasn't what we wanted to see in his opening game. Although, Sam, you spoke to some of those flashes that project out to be, a real NBA player. I think defensively he stood out really well. Talk to me a little bit about what you saw on that side of the ball from him.
Yeah, I thought he moved his feet well. And to your point, I don't have the exact number, but I think he only played like half the game. It was a blowout. I like to use Bart Torvik is like a site I like to use for my college basketball stats. They have their own box plus minus stat. And so his box plus minus kind of score from yesterday was 22.6. That's really good. Just to put that a little bit in perspective, like Scotty Barnes, for example, only had one game all of last season at Florida State that measured that well. Again, it's just one game against a bad team, and it's not like his raw numbers were that great, but the team dominated when he was on the court. Like you said, didn't turn the ball over, had a couple steals and blocks. To me, I thought he looked really good. You wanted to talk about the defense. Kind of one of the main things we want to see as evaluators is, how switchable is he going to be? Is that defense going to be as translatable as we hope? Because he's got the physical tools. I was reading also an interview of his today, and I love how he focused a ton, asking about how he can improve, how he can make an impact both this year and as a rookie in the NBA, assuming he goes next year. He really focused on defense, and so that awareness that he really needs to lock in on that side of the ball is key to me. In terms of like the limited film from the one game, I thought he moved his feet well. And so I do think that, that switchability probably is going to be translatable, but that's just something we're going to have to keep our eye on throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I thought that there were a few instances in this game, Sam, against Morehead State, where I think he used his footwork very well to close off a lane for attacking player. That really stood out to me, I think, in the opening part of the game. And you mentioned that you didn't really get to see a lot of him in this game. I can't remember what it was, if it was a cramp or if maybe he just got Charlie horsed in the leg. But I think there was like 7 or 8 minutes left of the second half where we weren't able to see him play the rest of the game because obviously Bruce Pearl doesn't want him, bring himself out against Morehead State with a pretty sizable lead there. But, moving forward, Sam, we're going to talk about another aspect. Now, this is the guy that we haven't seen play yet other than, what we've seen, with high school and whatnot. But Kendall Brown, the kid who committed to Baylor this past offseason, played his high school ball in Kansas. Again, measurable is anywhere from 6'7" to 6'8", 200 to 205 pounds. I've seen some comparisons to Matt Barnes, Sam. I don't know how you feel about that comparison.
As a guy that's a little higher on Kendall Brown, I'd say that's probably selling him a little short. I think he's a little bigger, both bigger, stronger, and more athletic. Like if we're saying kind of body type, I'm thinking more kind of along the lines of an Aaron Gordon would be kind of.
Are you there, Sam?
Yeah. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Kind of disappeared on me there, but it's all right. So you were talking about body type. You would compare Kendall Brown to an Aaron Gordon type.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. You said 6'7", 6'8". I've seen 6'9", but he's also just an elite athlete, like super quick twitch, can really jump for a guy his size too. Obviously Aaron Gordon's the elite of the elite, so we'll see. But just in terms of like a physical kind of just surface level comparison, like an Aaron Gordon type is someone I would compare him to.
I like that a lot more because, if you remember watching Matt Barnes play, obviously I think defenses are gleaning that comparison to a Matt Barnes because defensively Kendall looks like he's going to be a very capable guy here coming up for Baylor, which obviously why they wanted to recruit him. They're really on the defense there for that university on the wing. But like you mentioned, for the Aaron Gordon comparison, I really think that the athleticism, how quickly he can move, his side-to-side movements, his vertical ability, I think that's a lot better than what we saw from a Matt Barnes. But, continuing on down here, he's a teammate of Kennedy Chandler, was named to an All-American team again. And I'm going to go through the rankings again where other people had him, Sam. I've seen him 18th on the draft room. Didn't even see him listed on Tankathon. 38th on DraftNet, 19th for Bleacher Report. Didn't see him listed anywhere for ESPN. 21st on the Rookie Wire, not listed on Sporting News, and was 28th by our guy, Urson Demir, over at the Off the Ball Network. So seeing this wide range of rankings, saying when you gave me his name and I saw this, it piqued my curiosity on why you're so high on him compared to, the consensus right now.
Yeah, I think there's a chance he could be like a late lottery pick, but I guess we have to start with the question of just how much playing time he's going to get this year, because so Baylor does have two returning bigs in Flo Thamba and Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua, but those guys are, they're more role players, kind of placeholders. I do think he's going to be like top 5 on this Baylor team in minutes played. Like you said, Baylor develops guys in terms of both offensive skills, like we saw from guys like Davion Mitchell, Jared Butler, but also I think they're going to really help him defensively as well. And they don't really have like a stud big. Like I said, they kind of have those guys that are solid college players, role players. But if this team is going to reach, kind of what their ceiling can be, they're going to need Kendall Brown to be pretty good. I just think he's a little underrated as a prospect coming in. Like when you evaluate these prospects, you have to start with, what does this guy have that can't be taught, right? And with him, the physical tools are like an A+, and there are concerns right now about his jump shot. The form is a bit odd, but in terms of the rest of his offensive game, like he can actually handle the ball a little bit. He's got the baseline of a good passer too. Like we've seen guys rebuild their jump shots and become competent shooters, but you can't teach a lead athlete. You can't teach that level of impact on defense. And so I love the floor and kind of the foundation that he has to build on as a prospect.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn to another question to you about his offense, but looking at his athleticism, looking at his film, he's played alongside Kennedy Chandler, who right now is a darling amongst NBA Twitter right now, myself included. I loved his game that we saw against UT Martin. But playing alongside a point guard, right, which, there's some pretty good guards down there in Baylor. I think the off-ball movement is really what they're going to try to build his foundation upon first with that athleticism, cutting screens, maybe a couple, little flare screens, maybe to give him some separation to where he can try to do a little bit of something on the offensive end. But Sam, you touched on the jump shot. Obviously, that's the big question mark about him. What do you think that our expectations should be, right? We're bringing him up here on the show. He's one of your, Fantastic Four players that you want to watch. What's your initial expectations for him on that side of the ball? Because we know that throughout the season that he's going to continue to develop.
Yeah, kind of like I was saying, like the jump shot is something that can improve. It's like one of the skills that can be most improved and most, taught and learned through repetition and practice. So that's not something I'm too focused on. As you know, like when we evaluate the draft, so many of the prospects have the swing skill of just how good the super worried about that right now. But like I said, the foundation of like ball handling at that size, you'll mostly see it kind of in transition in full court situations and grab and goes and such. But he also is solid as a passer for kind of his role and his position. And like you said, it's not like he's going to be any type of primary ball handler. He's going to be playing off the guards. He's going to set screens. He's going to cut. He's going to find ways to contribute. Again, like similar, if we're talking role in the NBA, think like an Aaron Gordon or, going back kind of like a Sean Marion where you're playing off other guards using that kind of feel IQ, but especially that athleticism. So we haven't even seen him play yet. He's going to play tomorrow on
Yep.
Friday, and we'll get a look. So, I don't want to act like I'm overly confident in my analysis at this point because we still got to see how he plays this entire season. But coming in, I do think there's a chance that he exceeds expectations.
I'm with you. I'm more high on the guy than a lot of these other places are. And like you mentioned, that athleticism you can't teach. And we've seen guys just get by at bare minimum by being an athlete, right? But Kendall Brown, I think that he's got a lot of promise, given some secondary, maybe tertiary playmaking responsibilities, depending on the lineup, maybe just, an up fake dribble pass type thing. Nothing too crazy on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
And I think that he'll be all right. So moving on from a guy who isn't really known for being a ball handler to a guy that has had a couple pretty significant moments in the G League already with handling the ball, that being Dyson Daniels. Sam, you wanted to talk about Dyson today, and we've seen a couple of games where he played against South Bay Lakers. That was his better performance, right? 22 points, 9 of 15 from the floor, 3 assists, 6 boards, a steal, and only a couple turnovers. But we also saw the Agua Caliente Clipper game where he only scored 7 points. Didn't really put up a lot of numbers outside of 7 rebounds. Still moved the ball pretty well, 3 assists, a steal and a block, and turn the ball over a little bit more. But again, we're seeing these young men play against grown men who have had some G League experience. Sam, what have you thought about Dyson so far, and how has that measured up to your expectations?
Yeah, like you said, he's still only 18. He's a young kid. A lot of the guys he's playing against, I know we did this last year with the G League Ignite. Right now, we're more looking for flashes and just, a glimpse into what their upside can be. But we've seen, like you said, that South Bay Lakers game I did see was very good from him. And I also watched all of his film in the FIBA Under-19 World Cup where he played for Australia. He was really, really good in that tournament. So if you want to see some of that film from him, that would be a good place. If any of our listeners kind of want to see some of his highlights, he was awesome in that tournament. And especially when kids are like 18, 17 years old, you really want to see them play against kids their own age. And he, basically dominated most of the competition in his age group there. So what I like about him, he's kind of a combo guard at 6'6". So, the size is good. When we hear the term combo guard, it can be a little bit of a negative thing, but to me, it's really only a negative or a worry if the guy's just undersized. Like, he's not big enough to be a 2 guard, but he can't really play point either. But with Dyson Daniels, he's 6'6", could still be growing, like we said, still 18. So the size there is a positive. And he's just got a really good baseline of skill at 6'6". I like him on the defensive side of the ball too. What I've seen from him in the G League is playing a bit on and off the ball. Right now, I think he's best, like most guys his age, playing next to another guy that can help him with ball handling duties. He's not really a guy that quite has the level of ball handling or like quickness to constantly break down defenses and carry an offense on his own. But I mean, that's not really what we expect from an 18-year-old kid. So that's fine. I think in terms of his athleticism, I would classify him more as like a fluid, very coordinated kid. He's not really like the most dynamic, explosive guy, but that's fine. He's very fluid, has very good body control, kind of around the rim. You'll see him get to a lot of kind of floater and touch shots that he's made at a pretty good clip. And so just that baseline of skill at 6'6" with good feel, kind of one of the lines that I like to use with him is there's no real visible impediments with him as a prospect. And what I mean by that is with some prospects, you'll see, the form on the jumper could be an issue down the line, or they just don't have the physical tools, or maybe just the basketball feel isn't good enough. He just doesn't really have any impediments like that. And so I can see him really expanding his game, especially again at such a young age in a lot of different ways. And so just that package of all around kind of solidness right now is pretty intriguing.
Yeah, and so when I went through and looked at the film, a couple of the notes that I took, Sam,
Mhm.
of Dyson was that, he's got good touch in traffic, and he's not really he's big, but he doesn't play his size, I don't think. You know what I mean? He feels more like a finesse type
Yeah.
player right now. And I think that's just like we keep talking about, right? And it's not that that's a definite thing and it's finite. It's not going to continue to be the story. He's going to continue to get stronger and fill out his frame in the G League. And that's one of the major advantages, I think, that a lot of the kids who want to go into the G League, they get, world class training at an earlier level, right? So, right now, I think that he's got good touch and track. He's a capable shooter. I love his floater game. Although he's not kind of a freak athlete, I think he moves very well. He almost kind of has, an old man game where the game just kind of happens around him a little bit, as opposed to kind of forcing the issue. You can see again that strength needs to get kicked up. He's got solid vision. He makes good decision when the defense collapses. He has that ability to slip by an initial defender every once in a while. And I think that he plays really well with his head up and can see guys open a little bit better. But again, screen navigation, a lot of the defensive side of the ball, Sam, is where I'm thinking that he needs to improve a lot. But again, that's going to
Yeah.
be one of those things that throughout the season, through with more and more coaching and playing at a more advanced level, I feel like in the G League, somewhere that he's going to be able to improve upon throughout the season. I'm really high on Dyson.
Yeah, I have that in my notes too. Like the screen navigation in that South Bay Lakers game wasn't that great.
Hmm.
Like Mac McClung did kind of have his way with him a few times, but I'm not really worried about that. I kind of like him defensively actually because, like I was talking about, at this age, when they're playing against guys that are a lot older, we're mostly looking for flashes. But when you go and watch his film against the guys his own age, he was very, very good defensively.
Yeah.
And so I still definitely buy him as like a plus defender down the line, kind of in his prime in the NBA. And he's another guy. I watched an interview with him too. I think he did it with Mike Schmitz. Those interviews where they break down film. He really wants to be a good defender, and he has been against his own age group. I think he's got really good hands and just good feel for the game of basketball on that side. And so I'm not too worried about that at this point. I think he will be a positive defender. Like you said, the jump shot too is, I think, really good at this point. To me, probably the most likely avenue to like a high end ceiling outcome for him is just that the jump shot really hits for him kind of down the line because he doesn't really have that high end dynamic athleticism. It's more again of the fluid type.
Hmm.
And so he's not really going to consistently win that way. But if he can just be an all around solid player with some plus defense, good feel, that secondary ball handler, but then shoot it really well, to me, that's where I think he can be like an NBA starter.
Yeah, so Sam, one of the other things that I noticed on that shot, he hits that at a good clip, especially from deep. He has really good, kind of dribble moves and can kind of sidestep guys a little bit. But the load time, I think, is another area for him to get the shot off. It just seems a little bit slow. Is that me? Am I crazy, or do you kind of see that a little bit as well?
I don't know. I don't really consider myself too much of a shot doctor. I mean,
Okay.
like he's I don't think he's had any issues with it to this point. NBA teams will often tinker with guys' jump shots, whether you kind of like it or not. So it's going in right now. Like the form certainly isn't broken.
Hmm.
That's something he can continue to work on. And like I would also say that just it's very versatile too. Like you'll see him take and make step backs too, which is pretty key and pretty impressive for a kid his age.
Yep.
So kind of those step backs, those side steps, he can hit pull ups, and like you said, get you see some of the touch from him on those floaters, kind of near the rim. So the jumper is something I'm really not worried about with him at all. I think that's going to be kind of actually one of the more positive attributes with him down the line. It's just kids that like 17, 18-year-old kids usually. So I think he's kind of ahead of the field there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, and like I said, I like him a lot. I think right now I don't have. I'm kind of like you, Sam. I don't have a board right now. I don't like making one when I haven't seen a significant portion of the group play.
Yeah.
I don't want to put something out that I'm not real sure on. But kind of gut check feeling for Dyson is that he's definitely kind of in that top 14 lottery pick conversation for myself as well. So, Sam, the last guy that you wanted to talk about is probably my favorite. And, I watched his last game. I did a little bit of film editing and stuff, put some clips together for future projects. I'm really high on this guy, Caleb Houston out of Michigan. I feel like the reasons that I like him are going to be a lot of the same reasons that you wanted to discuss him. Kind of talk to us a little bit about what your reasoning for wanting to keep a closer look on Caleb is.
Yeah, he's been great at Montverde for a while. So he's a guy that obviously has been in the national spotlight, played for some of the best high school teams ever. And they're kind of similar to Moses Moody from this last draft class. He more played a role as kind of a shooter, off-ball guy. But then when we got to see him play for Canada in the Youth World Cup this past summer, there for Canada is where we saw him a little bit more on ball. We saw him kind of explore what his offensive game could be. And to me, that was it was pretty eye-opening because I was just wondering if he had the ability to even try some of that stuff and explore, some of the studio space of his offensive game. So that to me was very good to see. The thing that, is kind of his best attribute is just the shooting. That's kind of what he's been known for and done in high school. And actually in that FIBA World Cup tournament, he really struggled to shoot from deep, but he did everything else really well. So that was just a really positive tournament for him in my eyes. That did kind of increase my view of his long-term ceiling and potential as a prospect. And he's another guy where I think Michigan yesterday in their game wanted to kind of get a feel for, a lot of the roster. So he only played like 20, 25 minutes. They were up a bunch in the first half and then ended up being kind of close. But a lot of what we've seen from him, we saw yesterday from Michigan. I thought he had good feel, a couple very nice passes. Then the shooting was good too. And of course, we have to mention the size at like 6'8". And so, yeah, he's a guy that I think is probably going to be in the 6, 7, 8 range on my board, which is higher than I think most people have him at this point.
I'm kind of feeling him in like that fringe top 5, I kind of where you are, that 5 through 8 neighborhood. I really like him a lot. When I was watching him play, he just moves like an NBA player, his off ball movements, even his willingness to set a screen on some of those like Spain pick and roll movements. Yep. I thought it led to a couple easy buckets from that roster. And, you mentioned that his shot is one of the prettiest shots that you're going to watch this year, in my opinion. He has playmaking ability that we touched on, and I think that he plays the passing lanes really well. I was more impressed with his defensive abilities in that game as well. So, Sam, we talked about 4 of these guys here. You did a great job. I feel like, navigating our listeners and viewers, the reasons that you're so high on them. Kind of before we close out today, and, if you're listening to us here on the Nothing Minute channel on Dash Radio, we have Sam Ferris of Draft Dummies and of the Locked On Podcast Network. Sam, what's been kind of your initial response to these first couple games? Do you think that you're, I know that you're a pro, right? So you're navigating this a lot better than some of us, but kind of like taking a step back and taking a deep breath for some of our initial feels, that's one of the more difficult spots. What's one player though, that if you could, that we discussed today, you can even bring up a couple that just kind of popped in your initial, viewing of them so far early this season.
Yeah. So did you say from this list of 4 guys or from other guys?
Other guys.
Other guys.
Yes,
yeah. So Patrick Baldwin is a guy that that I really liked his first game. So again, another guy that we got to see a lot of this past summer in the Youth World Cup, playing for the USA. And of course, that team, like always, is super stacked with the best players. So he was more playing a role as kind of a shooter, running off screens, catch and shoot guy. But now that he's playing at a lesser school, University of Wisconsin, it's a mouthful, where his dad's coaching, he's the best player on his team. So we're getting to see more of him on the ball. And so I really liked what I saw from him game 1. And we talk about Caleb Houston has a nice stroke. like Patrick Baldwin's shot is even nicer. He, to me, has the best combination of size and shooting at like 6'8". Another guy that's going to be fringe, like top 5 for me in this class.
Yeah, he's a good one. It's hard to go wrong with PB&J. He was kind of one of the
Yeah.
darlings to be, a top 5 player on a lot of people's list. For myself, Sam, I was a big fan of what I saw. I'll mention 2 guys, and I'm really curious to see what you think about my second. My first is Kennedy Chandler. I thought that his first game, again, it was against UT Martin, so not really a powerhouse school, but his speed, he plays a lot faster than I had anticipated him coming in. His playmaking is there. He went 4-4 from deep. Screen navigation, I felt like, offensively, his ability to just kind of move around defenders, I thought was very promising for Tennessee this season. And then my second guy, he's a senior this year. I don't know how you feel about Will Richardson out of Oregon. I'm a big fan of his. I have high hopes and expectations for him this season. He himself finished with 20 points. I think it was like 4 of 6 from deep. He looked really good. What did you think about those 2 guys? Did you get a chance to look at any of their film?
Yes, I saw more of Kennedy Chandler, so I can speak to that a bit more. I saw the box score for Will Richardson, and it looked like he played well. Haven't gotten a chance to see any of the tape from that game. Excuse me. But Kennedy Chandler, I'm excited for them because that Tennessee backcourt with he and Justin Powell, who transferred from Auburn last year. I talked about that on my podcast this week, that might be my favorite backcourt to watch in the country this year. I really liked what Powell was showing last year. In the end, he ended up, picking up an injury and sitting out towards the end of the year, and then transferred within the SEC over to Tennessee. But yeah, Kennedy Chandler might be the best point guard in this incoming freshman class. You can certainly make that argument. What I loved from him was, we know he has that speed, like you talked about, the passing ability. The question was, how good was the jumper going to be? And immediately you saw defenders going under screens, and he was just pulling up and hitting that pull-up 3 without hesitation. I think 4 of 4 from 3. So he certainly had one of the better performances from a freshman day one.
Yeah, and he's one of these guys that I'm expecting to rise up people's boards throughout the season. And not that it really depends on, either older type situation. Like, what do you classify as a point guard anymore in the NBA? But as far as, like that traditional sense of a point guard, Kennedy is obviously right up there with the best of them. Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming in and talking about your fantastic 4 players that you want to watch throughout the rest of the season. I appreciate you indulging me a little bit more on some of the other players that weren't on this list that some of the people may have seen and wanted to get your insight on. But before we close out, just would love for you to go ahead and tell my audience where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. You can follow me on Twitter at Draft Dummies. I'm, posting some of my thoughts, stats. I like to take clips of the games I'm watching just to see, so you guys can see kind of the film that I'm watching as well. And then, like we've talked about, I host every Wednesday on the Locked On NBA Draft podcast. So if you search Locked On NBA Draft wherever you get your podcast, you'll see that. And we've got 2 other hosts that host other days of the week. I think they're all great. So go ahead and give that podcast a listen if you want some more NBA draft content.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite listens. It should be your first listen of the week, is what you guys like to say over there. I'm a big fan of what you guys do. Raphael, just had the big news that he recently married. Congratulations to him. And then also taking his talents abroad and going to be studying out there. And then Mavs draft, I'm going to do some work with him down the line. We've had our preliminary discussions so far. We just got to nail down some details. So hopefully have all of you guys over from the Locked On NBA Draft podcast over here. That would be great. But as for myself and for my co-host, Chris LeBron, who couldn't be here today for work-related purposes, a big shout out to you, Chris. Appreciate everything that you do for us. But for myself here on the Draft Capital Show, powered by my bookie and Built Bar, that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening over on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. We will catch up with you guys next time. Much love, everybody.